Hi, my name is Regina Lausell and I am the CEO of the Light Vitality Group. Light Wellness ROI isn't an easy conversation by any means. It's a combination of qualifying return of investment from the standpoint of financial indicators and the value of investment from behavior, process, and health-driven indicators, which can later translate into financial indicators. This is a particularly powerful conversation for business owners, but in order to understand how a business and its bottom line can benefit from employee sleep health and its relationship to the environment in which we work in, we first have to understand the function of sleep, that being the knowledge of circadian regulation, and the function of light and its impact on circadian regulation, and how to ultimately turn that into a light wellness solution that saves you money. The U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has an entire division of education dedicated to complex work hours and worker fatigue. Worker fatigue is arguably detrimental to an employer's bottom line. 2020 reports indicate that employers spend about $2,000 on fatigue losses or expenses per employee annually. And this is broken down between high sleep health, moderate sleep health, and poor sleep health employees. High sleep health employees are your most productive go-getters. They're bringing in tons of revenue for you, right? Moderate sleep health employees are getting the job done and taking a few days off, right? And low sleep health employees have the least productivity, make the most errors, and take the most days off. Low sleep health employees also tend to have a higher rate of accident on the job, and that's because poor sleep health leads to slower cognitive and physical reaction times. So small accidents like stapling a hand or slipping off a ladder, getting a splinter that then becomes infected, that can reduce the speed of productivity. To things even more serious like slipping off a ladder and getting a head injury or a broken bone, right? That translates into time off, whether paid or not, and workers' comp, and maybe even legal fees. So sleep has become addressed in a major way with some big industry representatives like Google, Nike, Procter & Gamble, Ben & Jerry's, right? These companies are tending to their employees' sleep health with interventions like sleeping pods, meditation spaces, and even flexible work schedules to accommodate personal sleep chronotypes of their employees to reduce or eliminate and prevent accidents and errors while on the job. But one of the biggest reasons for fatigue that we all tend to neglect in taking accountability for is the lighting in our environments. And that's simply because we just don't know enough about it, right? So if you are tending to your sleep health or that of your employees, there are a few tips that I would like to leave you with to ensure that you are making the most of your light wellness solutions and getting the most return on investment. Some of these are pretty well known now, but it never hurts to reiterate them. And so the first few set of tips are more lighting specific. So number one, make sure you are getting as bright a light as possible in the first few hours after waking up from a vertical orientation or from overhead at a downward angle. Now, for day active individuals, this might look like 7 to 10 a.m. For more evening active individuals, this may look more like 2 to 5 p.m. Okay. Number two, make sure you are getting as dim a light as possible from below the eye level about 2 to 3 hours before you're trying to fall asleep. Blue blocking glasses can support you, if you're a shift worker and you need to block some of that light during the day. And number three, make sure you are balancing this bright to dim light conscious lifestyle at minimum 3 to 4 days out of the week. Any additional days that you are balancing your lifestyle under light in this way is only further capitalizing on your light wellness ROI. The next few tips are more personal and behavioral driven, right? So number one, practice good sleep hygiene. There is a wonderful list of recommendations available to you from the National Sleep Foundation at www.sleepfoundation.org. And number two, a spin-off of sleep hygiene, be mindful of what foods you're putting into your body and at what time of day, right? Time of day matters greatly, whether it's light, sleep, exercise, food, and nutrition, right? You don't want to be putting processed sugars and caffeine in your body 4 to 6 hours before you're trying to fall asleep. Number three, wash your produce thoroughly. I know it sounds bizarre, but it is an important component to sleep hygiene. Some pesticides used can break down into fake melatonin receptors. So even if you're getting the right kind of light at the right time of day and you're balancing in a light conscious way, your body might not be able to absorb the melatonin that it's producing, ultimately prohibiting your return on investment, right? Now you can see that these kinds of discussions are so important to the light wellness conversation as a whole. When identifying what kind of return to expect from your light wellness solution, we have to be able to communicate on the perspective that circadian rhythms are the foundation of major health profiles that contribute to employee productivity. Circadian rhythms support the function of nutrition, physical fitness, stress, and immune system responsiveness. The function of these pillars of wellness can signify the difference between a high sleep health employee and a low sleep health employee. And if you aren't tending to them, the efforts you make to balance your lifestyle under light won't make much of a difference to justify a large investment in a light wellness solution. We in the lighting industry are now seeing a means to qualify metrics used in light wellness best practices. And by that, I mean lighting solutions that are spectrally optimized for supporting circadian health and testing it with light and health scales to measure the effectiveness on the human body. However, the metric units are only one fraction of the light wellness recipe. And we now have services in place inside the lighting field that are coined circadian supportive lighting audits. LVG actually began our auditing process in 2017 for small business owners, and now manufacturers inside the light wellness industry are refining these services and putting them on market. So it's a really exciting time for both designers and business owners to be joining the light wellness conversation, because we now have these new tools available to examine and qualify spaces for supporting circadian health. A lot of designers and manufacturers have difficulty in identifying where the value and ROI in a market or an application type exists. I like to break down my market selections with a two-step process. First, I weigh between short-term daily occupancy and long-term daily occupancy. And second, I weigh between the frequency of occupancy by day and the frequency of occupancy by week. There is a very simple tip that I like to give lighting designers, community members, you name it, I'll give it to anyone, and it's this: remember the bucket. We now know through evidence-based research that using a lower intensity of light for a longer duration of time will provide a similar physiological impact as using a higher intensity of light for a shorter period of time. So, just like filling a bucket with water, right? Both buckets are going to get filled, except one bucket is going to get filled faster, right? And one bucket is going to fill slower. And it's the same concept of, how our body is going to be able to interpret and receive and process signals of light. Higher outputs with shorter periods of time is more of a clinical model of light therapy, whereas lower outputs for longer periods of time is more of a passive model of light therapy. So that said, take commercial offices or residences even, and to identify what kind of light wellness solution is best suited per space type, we first have to break down the spatial programming by how many times a day that space is being used and how long those spaces are being used per occupancy session. Now, spaces with less frequent use and a shorter duration would lend themselves to a more clinical model, whereas spaces more frequently used for a longer duration would lend themselves to a passive model of light wellness. When we can start framing programming in this context, we may begin to see nested environments inside a building that can manifest as big gestures rather than a whole building solution that eats into your client's budget. So you wind up saving your client money and getting more bang for your buck.